Hey, Edgies, it's pretty cool when you hear somebody say something about you and you're like, huh, that is true. It feels good. I guess the alternative is when someone says something about you and it's not true, then like that does not feel good. All right. Anyway, there is a comment in like the book club. Carrie said something about like Ania strongly believes in striking while the iron is hot, like in terms of recording coaching videos. And I was like, that is true. And the iron is very hot right now. And so thank you so much, Mandi, for allowing me to just kind of hijack your prickle right now. But it was like the perfect time for me to do so because Mandi presented on the 8th grade smarts this past Monday. And I was like, if there's any holes in what I present in my application, then I feel better that Mandi's kind of my safety net to point out anything that I may have missed so that we can just have like an even stronger presentation of knowledge here. So I am just contributing to the conversation. We're like building on top of what we learned. But my hope is that in this daily coaching video, you don't have to watch Mandi's presentation. I strongly recommend you do. I might just keep doing catch up breathe days for coaching and accountability until you watch that one because it's a very like palatable character building development that's not as like intense as the Enneagram. And so I figured let's do applications of people smarts first. And then we can see like we can play around with the Enneagram moving forward. So that being said, let me go ahead and share what I have just a little bit. So I'm going to share this part first. So the scene's purpose all the time, in every single scene that we're writing, we want to showcase the characters and further the plot. Like that is true no matter what we're doing, no matter what scene we're writing. If those two things aren't happening in the scene, then that scene doesn't really belong. Then it's just kind of like a nice thing that we wrote and we probably like should remove it. Like if the scene exists and you can remove it and nothing changes in the story or the character, the scene doesn't belong there. It's okay. It could be a nice little newsletter snippet for people in the future, right? I hope we all can agree that that wasn't a waste of time. You got to know the characters a little bit more, but for the purpose of like the book, like the published book, you don't need that. Okay, so we're going to play around with an idea by applying, we're going to put 3 different smarts in one group of friends, okay? So we're going to have a nature smart person, a people smart person, and a self smart person. So very briefly, if you did not watch the 8 smarts, what this means is that the nature smart person, how they perceive, Mandi, help me out here. It's how you perceive and like reflect on emotions. How is it?
Yeah, it's how you process the world around you. So yeah, you're taking in what's happening or what you're feeling, and then this is how you basically deal with it.
Right. So it's like it's how your brain is responding to what just happened to you. So a nature smart person, something's happened and they're going to be relying on like the patterns that they saw. A people smart person is going to think out loud with people around them. So like if something happens and you find yourself calling your 10 closest friends to like talk it out, you're probably people smart. And then a self smart person thinks by themselves. They value deep and quiet reflection, and something that Mandi said is that we're kind of all of them. You might just lean on like 2 or 3. Is it like 2 to 4? Is the number 2 to 4? Where you just like those are kind of your smarts. Those are how you're smart. That's how you perceive the world, like where you are right now. Okay, so I'm just basically like what's at the top here is what Mandi taught us. So these are just this is what I'm sharing from my notes that I took on Monday. And like, oh my God, my wrist was hurting by the end. So like people who can watch the recording, good for you. You can pause it. You can go back. Way to go. All right. So the nature smart person, this friend is most likely to like want to go on outings, to the park, to the zoo, to a restaurant, whatever. People smart person, they love people watching and they love spending time together with their friends. And what's really interesting is a people smart person, because they're so good at observing, they can pick up when like a dynamic, something's not quite right, or like how it's moving, how it's working. A self smart person, this is not like the only thing. Like this is not their defining characteristic. This is just like for the purposes of this daily coaching video for this scene. This is what I decided to like pick and choose. It's like a la carte. That's what's fun. Once you learn about these 8 great smarts, you can kind of go through the list and be like, "Ooh, let's do this trait," or like, "Let's try this trait." So for this purpose, I decided to choose the one where she's like, she may balk at participating in activities they believe have no personal value or benefit, which is interesting. Your brain already might be like, uh-oh, nature smart person likes to go on outings. The self smart person may be balking at this activity. So we can already see there's potential for conflict here. And what do we do if not put our characters into conflict? This is how we write books. Okay, I've named them. I just did ABC to make it easy, okay? Ariel is nature smart. Her motivation, she wants to go to the zoo with her best friends. I don't know why yet. It's not a very great motivation, but like for now, it's fine. Bridget is people smart. She's cool with the idea. She's a very go with the flow person. She's like, I get to hang out with my friends and I get to people watch. That sounds like a great Tuesday to me. The fact that they can go out to the zoo on a Tuesday, good for them. Okay. I don't know how old they are, but they can do that and we're happy for them. Cassie is self smart. And Cassie does not see how going to the zoo is going to help her life situation because she just lost her job and she's like not applying for jobs while she's at the zoo. I felt this was very real and doesn't paint Cassie as like a bad person. And I think that was important because here, when you see like the descriptions of the smarts where we're like, oh, I don't know if we would want that. Like that's a people pleaser in us. Like that's like I wouldn't want to be perceived this way. But for real talk, like I don't like going on walks if it doesn't mean I'm not doing like going somewhere, right? So like to some destination. I need to be going somewhere. And my best friend growing up, she's like, let's go for a walk. And I was like, why? So like I understand this. Now I appreciate the journey. But here I think it's important to say like, let's not perceive like the downsides of the smarts as like bad. I think that it all has a place. Would we agree with that, Mandi? Is that like a fair assessment? Okay, so let's see how this is going to play out. Ariel's very go with the flow. Going to be totally oblivious to Cassie's passive aggressive. Oh, look, another sleeping animal. And like this can just like she's thinking in her head about, and we don't know whose perspective this is from. I think this is fun where you can like kind of play with whose perspective is this scene going to be from, which will be more powerful. I hope to answer that by the end of this. So Cassie's not having a good time. Ariel's like, oh my god, a giraffe. And then Bridget is people smart. She can feel the tension between her friends. She sees exactly what's going on. And so she's like already coming up with a plan of like who's she gonna talk to? Is she gonna tell Ariel that like maybe like, hey, have you noticed Cassie kind of being like, is she down in the dumps, do you think? Do you see that? And Ariel's gonna be like, really? Is she? And then something that was interesting is in the people smart, another like I don't know, something that might be perceived as bad is that a people smart person might be manipulative. And can you see how that might be? Like if she can see the dynamic of her friend group, her desire is to help her friends. So is it like manipulative or is it strategic, right? Like what's the intention behind what's going on here? She's going to hope it works out. The wild card here is definitely in how Cassie is going to receive Bridget and Ariel. Chances are very high that there is possibility for conflict to be at the end of the scene, which would be really interesting if this were a catalyst in this novel. I can kind of see this being like a YA genre, like maybe it's like a fantasy right before they find the portal, like maybe Cassie doesn't have to apply for the job because she actually finds out she's magic, like I don't know, anything's possible. So we can see that Cassie might not feel understood because she didn't actually get what she needs. She did not need a zoo outing. She needed her friends, but also she needed time to process by herself. Bridget feels sad because her efforts may not have worked, and Ariel's either upset or confused, or she's just like, I don't understand what was going on. We were having a fine time at the zoo, right? So like, there's so much potential here. So what's at work in this scene? There are two big things. We have tension rising. So depending on the extent of the passive aggressive comments and Ariel's obliviousness and whether Bridget's like plan is going to go to work, tension is rising. Like especially if it's from Bridget's perspective, that's kind of where I landed on in this scenario. If it's Bridget's perspective, then we are going to feel all of this, and it's going to make it a very engaging scene for the reader. And something that you either know or don't know is the scene is most clear and powerful if you can start with a motivation. Like remind the reader, like, what is the motivation and what's the expectation of the character? Like, does the character expect to get the job by the end of the chapter? If they expect to get the job, then it's our job to make sure she does not get the job. Like we have to do the opposite of what she expected at the start. But sometimes there's a surprise of like she expected to just have like a regular walk around the neighborhood. Well, that didn't happen. She found a dog. Now the dog is in her basement or whatever, right? Like we play around with expectations all the time. I don't know that I've had an explicit coaching video on that. So that's like, there's your plus 5. All right. That's it. I hope that this gives you just like an idea of how you can apply some of the smarts. And then I talked as fast as I possibly could so that we could get all of this in a shorter amount of time. But it really is such a cool lens and modality to apply for your characters. So I highly recommend you take a look at that 8 Smart webinar replay. I think that it is just as important as the Enneagram stuff that we've been learning. All of the like cognitive behavioral therapy stuff that we've learned and applied. We'll probably have to review that for our newer hedgies, but yeah, it's super cool. Mandi, thank you so much for teaching us. Is there anything else that you'd like to add from that scenario that you saw?
No, I love that. I'm also glad you landed on Bridget's perspective, because at the beginning when you were like, there's the perspective it should be, I was like, it's gonna be Bridget.
Yes, exactly. I think Bridget's perspective would be most helpful here because she does see the dynamics and feel the dynamics of the entire group. So it seems to make sense that that would be the most powerful for the reader experience. So cool. Thanks, hedgies. I'll see you in the Slack and